Hello, my name is Dylan. I'm 31. I work as a freelance carpenter, mostly doing custom furniture and home repairs around town. I live in the same house I grew up in, which sounds more pathetic than it actually is. When my dad passed 3 years ago, Mom needed help with the mortgage, and I needed a place to figure out what came next. It worked out for both of us. The house sits on a quiet street lined with maple trees that turn brilliant orange every October. It's the kind of neighborhood where people still wave from their porches and know each other's dogs by name. Mom's lived here for 35 years, which means she's collected quite a few friends over the decades. Most of them I've known since I was a kid, watching them gather around our kitchen table for book club meetings or birthday celebrations. Kate is different, though. She moved to town about 2 years ago, right after her divorce was finalized. Mom met her at the community center during a pottery class and immediately took her under her wing. That's just how Mom is. She sees someone who looks a little lost and decides they need feeding and friendship. Kate needed both. I remember the first time Mom brought her home for dinner. I was in the garage working on a dining table commission, sanding down the cherry wood top until it felt like silk under my fingertips. The sweet smell of wood dust hung in the air, and I had my headphones on, lost in the rhythm of the work. When I finally came inside, covered in sawdust, and probably looking like I'd been wrestling with a tree, there was this woman sitting at our kitchen counter. She had dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing a paint-splattered sweater that suggested she'd been doing something creative before dinner. Her laugh filled the kitchen, not the polite laugh you use with strangers, but something genuine and warm. Mom was telling one of her stories about the neighbors, probably the one about Mr. Henderson and his ongoing war with the raccoons. And Kate was actually listening, not just waiting for her turn to talk, but really listening. "Kate, this is my son, Dylan," Mom said, beaming like she was introducing royalty. "Dylan, Kate just moved here from Portland. She's an artist." Kate stood up to shake my hand, and I realized I was still covered in wood dust. I brushed my palm on my jeans, probably making it worse. "Sorry, occupational hazard," I said, and she smiled. "I like it," she said. "Shows you actually make things with your hands. That's becoming rare." There was something in the way she said it that made me look at her more carefully. She had green eyes that seemed to notice everything, and when she smiled, it reached all the way to those eyes. But underneath the warmth, I caught a glimpse of something else. Not sadness exactly, but maybe the kind of careful guardedness that comes from having your trust broken. That was 8 months ago. Since then, Kate has become a regular fixture at our dinner table. She comes over every few weeks, sometimes with a bottle of wine, sometimes with homemade bread that smells like heaven, always with stories about her art or the quirky customers at the gallery where she works part-time. Mom loves having her around, and honestly, so do I. Kate has this way of asking questions that make you think. Not invasive questions, but the kind that shows she's genuinely curious about how your mind works. She'll ask about the grain pattern in a piece of wood I'm working on, or why I chose to join two boards a certain way. And then she'll listen to the answer like it's the most fascinating thing she's ever heard. It's been a long time since someone was interested in the details of what I do. Tonight was supposed to be just another dinner. Mom had invited Kate over to try her new recipe for chicken marsala, and I'd promised to fix the wobbly leg on Kate's kitchen chair while she was here. It's become our routine. She brings something broken, I fix it, we all eat together, and then she heads home to her little apartment above the flower shop downtown. But tonight felt different from the moment Kate walked through the door. She seemed distracted. Her usual bright energy dimmed to something more subdued. During dinner, she picked at her food and let the conversation flow around her instead of diving in like she usually does. Mom noticed too. I caught her giving Kate those concerned looks that mothers perfect over decades of practice. "The marsala is incredible," Kate said, making an effort to engage. "You'll have to give me the recipe." "Of course, honey," Mom replied, but I could hear the question in her voice. She wanted to know what was wrong, but she's too polite to pry. That's the thing about Mom. She'll feed you and fuss over you and make sure you feel welcome, but she won't push for information you're not ready to share. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Mom settled into her favorite armchair with her knitting, and Kate curled up on one end of the couch. I took the other end, close enough to smell her perfume. something light and floral that always makes me think of spring mornings. The chair she'd brought for me to fix sat in the corner, forgotten for the moment. We talked about safe things. The weather, which had been unseasonably warm for October, the new coffee shop that opened on Main Street, Kate's latest painting, and ACA painting, which she described as an exercise in controlled chaos that made Mom laugh. But underneath the casual conversation, I could feel something building. Kate kept glancing at the clock on the mantel, and her fingers worried the edge of a throw pillow. Eventually, Mom started her usual evening routine. She gathered up the teacups, fluffed the cushions, and made small noises about how late it was getting. I should probably head up to bed soon, she said, which was her polite way of giving Kate an opening to leave if she wanted to. But Kate didn't move toward the door. Instead, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Would it be okay if I stayed a little longer? She asked. I know it's getting late, but I'm not quite ready to go home yet. Of course, I said, probably too quickly. Stay as long as you want. Mom smiled at both of us, the kind of smile that suggests she knows something we don't. I'll leave you two to chat, she said, kissing Kate on the forehead like she was one of her own children. Don't stay up too late, Dylan. You have that cabinet delivery in the morning. After Mom went upstairs, the house settled into its familiar evening quiet. The old radiators ticked softly, and somewhere in the walls, the pipes made their gentle settling sounds. Kate and I sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the shadows from the street lamp dance across the ceiling. Your mom is wonderful, Kate said finally. I hope you know how lucky you are. I do, I replied, especially since Dad died. She could have fallen apart, but instead she just expanded, like she decided to fill the empty space with more love for everyone else. Kate nodded, and I saw her throat work like she was swallowing something difficult. I never had that, she said quietly. My parents were good people, but they weren't warm. Everything was about achievement and success and making the right impression. Love was conditional on performance. I wanted to say something comforting, but the words felt inadequate. Instead, I shifted closer on the couch, close enough that our knees almost touched. Sometimes presence says more than words. Is that why you moved here? I asked. To get away from all that? She laughed, but it wasn't her usual warm laugh. This one had sharp edges. Partly. Mostly I moved here because my ex-husband decided he preferred his 25-year-old assistant to his 32-year-old wife. Apparently, I'd gotten too set in my ways and wasn't fun anymore. She made air quotes with her fingers, and I could hear the pain beneath the sarcasm. That's his loss, I said, and meant it. Kate looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was trying to decide something. Dylan, she said, and there was something different in her voice, something vulnerable and brave at the same time. Can I tell you something? Always. She took a deep breath. You always know when I need help, even when I don't say anything, even when I'm trying to pretend everything's fine. How do you do that? The question caught me off guard. I'd never really thought about it consciously. But she was right. There had been dozens of small moments over the past 8 months when I'd sensed she needed something. A listening ear, a distraction, someone to fix the things that were broken in her physical world when she couldn't fix the things that were broken in her emotional one. I don't know, I said honestly. I guess I just pay attention. You get this look in your eyes when you're carrying something heavy, like tonight. You've had that look since you walked in. She was quiet for a long moment, staring down at her hands. Her fingernails were stained with paint, and there was a small cut on her thumb that suggested she'd been working with something sharp. I got a call today, she said finally, from my lawyer. The divorce is officially final. All the papers are signed, all the assets divided. I'm officially a free woman. That's good news, isn't it? I asked, though her tone suggested otherwise. It should be. I wanted this. I fought for it. But now that it's done, she shrugged, a gesture that tried to be casual but didn't quite succeed, I feel empty, like I spent so much energy getting away from something that I forgot to figure out what I was moving toward. I understood that feeling more than I wanted to admit. After Dad died, I'd felt the same way, like I'd been so focused on helping Mom through her grief that I'd forgotten to process my own. Like I'd been treading water for so long that I'd forgotten how to swim towards shore. What do you want? I asked. If you could have anything? What would it be? Kate smiled, and for the first time all evening, it reached her eyes. That's a dangerous question. The best ones usually are. She shifted on the couch, turning to face me fully. The movement brought her closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. I want to feel like I belong somewhere, really belong, not just exist on the edges of other people's lives. I want to wake up in the morning and feel excited about the day instead of just grateful that I survived the night. Her honesty was like a gift, fragile and precious. I wanted to handle it carefully. I want to create something that matters, she continued. Not just pretty pictures that people hang on their walls, but something that actually means something to someone. And I want, she paused, biting her lower lip, I want someone to see me, really see me. Not just the version of myself I present to the world. The air between us felt charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm when you can feel the electricity building. I knew I was standing at one of those crossroads that you look back on later as a defining moment. I could play it safe, give her some generic encouragement, and keep our relationship in the comfortable territory of friendship. Or I could be brave. I see you, I said quietly. Kate's breath caught, and I watched her eyes widen slightly. Dylan, I see how you really listen when people talk, like their words matter to you. I see how you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating on a painting. I see how you always bring something when you come to dinner, even though mom's told you 100 times you don't need to, because you can't stand the idea of taking without giving back. I was gaining momentum now, the words coming easier. I see how you light up when you talk about art, like there's this whole universe inside you that most people never get to glimpse. I see how you're kind to everyone. The grocery store clerk, the mailman, the grumpy old woman who lives next to the gallery, because you understand what it feels like to be invisible. Kate was very still, her eyes never leaving my face. I could see her chest rising and falling with quick, shallow breaths. And I see how you're scared, I continued, my voice gentler now. Scared of trusting again, scared of wanting things, scared of taking up too much space in the world. But Kate, you deserve to take up space. You deserve to be seen and known. And I paused, my heart hammering against my ribs. Loved. The word hung in the air between us like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Kate stared at me for what felt like forever, and I wondered if I'd said too much, so much, pushed too hard, ruined the careful friendship we'd built. Then she reached out and touched my face, her palm cool against my cheek. You really do see me, she whispered. Every day, I said, from that first night when you laughed at Mom's raccoon story. I've been seeing you every day since then. Kate's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. I've been seeing you too. The way you take care of your mom without making her feel like a burden, the way your hands move when you talk about wood, like you're sculpting the air, the way you fix things. Not just broken chairs and squeaky hinges, but broken people too. You're not broken, I said. Maybe not anymore. Her thumb traced along my cheekbone. You know what's funny? I came here tonight because I was afraid. Afraid of being alone with all this freedom I'd fought so hard for. But sitting here with you, I'm not afraid anymore. The distance between us seemed to shrink without either of us moving. I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could count the individual lashes framing her eyes. Kate, I said, and her name felt different on my tongue now, weighted with possibility. Yes? What happens now? She smiled, and it was like watching the sun come up. I don't know, but for the first time in years, I'm excited to find out. I leaned forward, slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she met me halfway. And when our lips touched, it felt like coming home and starting an adventure at the same time. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like we were both afraid of breaking something precious. But then Kate's hand moved to the back of my neck, her fingers threading through my hair, and I felt her relax against me. I deepened the kiss, tasting the wine she'd had with dinner and something else that was purely her. When we finally broke apart, we stayed close, foreheads touching, sharing the same breath. I should probably go, Kate said, but she made no move to leave. Probably, I agreed, not moving either. We stayed like that for a while, wrapped up in each other in the quiet of the house around us. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows and sending leaves skittering across the porch. But inside, everything felt still and perfect and full of promise. Dylan, Kate said eventually, thank you for seeing me, for helping me see myself. I pulled back just enough to look at her properly. Her hair had come loose from its bun, and her lips were slightly swollen from our kiss. She looked beautiful and real and here, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. Thank you for letting me, I said. Kate smiled and kissed me again, quick and sweet. Then she stood up, smoothing down her sweater and tucking her hair behind her ears. I really should go. But Dylan? Yeah? Would you like to have coffee with me tomorrow, just the two of us? My heart did something acrobatic in my chest. I'd love that. Good, she said, because I think I'd like to try this whole being seen thing. It's terrifying, but it's also exciting, I suggested. Perfect, she said. It's perfect. I walked her to the door, helped her into her jacket, and watched from the porch as she drove away. Her taillights disappeared around the corner, but I stayed outside for a few more minutes, breathing in the cool October air and trying to process what had just happened. When I finally went back inside, I found Mom sitting at the kitchen table in her robe, a cup of tea steaming in front of her. Everything okay? She asked, but her eyes were twinkling with mischief. Yeah, Mom, everything's okay. Good, she said, taking a sip of her tea. Kate's a special girl. She deserves someone who sees her for who she really is. I stared at her. How did you... Dylan, honey, I've been watching you two dance around each other for months. It was only a matter of time. She patted my cheek as she passed by on her way back upstairs. I'm happy for you both. Now, lock up and get some sleep. You have that delivery in the morning. I laughed and shook my head. Sometimes I forgot that Mom had been navigating matters of the heart long before I was even born. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, with the kind of golden light that makes everything look like it's been touched by magic. I delivered the cabinet to my client, a beautiful piece made from reclaimed barnwood that had taken me 3 weeks to complete, and then headed to the coffee shop on Main Street. Kate was already there, sitting at a table by the window with 2 cups in front of her. She'd changed out of last night's paint-splattered sweater into a soft blue dress that brought out her eyes, and her hair was down, catching the morning light like spun silk. Hi, she said when I sat down across from her. Hi yourself? We grinned at each other like teenagers, and I felt that same electric charge I'd felt the night before. I got you a coffee, Kate said, pushing one of the cups toward me. Black, right? Right. How did you know that? I pay attention too, she said with a smile. We talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing, about her art and my woodworking, about books and movies and places we wanted to travel, about dreams we'd put on hold and fears we were ready to face. It was the kind of conversation that makes you lose track of time, where each revelation leads to another until you feel like you're mapping the geography of each other's souls. I have an idea, Kate said as we were getting ready to leave. There's this art fair next weekend in Millbrook. Would you like to go with me? I mean, as a date, an official, no ambiguity about it date. I'd love that, I said, but fair warning, I don't know much about art. That's okay, I'll teach you, and maybe you can teach me something about woodworking. I've always wanted to try it. The idea of Kate in my workshop, her hands learning the feel of wood grain, sent a warm thrill through me. Deal. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a new rhythm. Kate still came to dinner at Mom's house, but now she also came to my workshop, fascinated by the process of turning raw lumber into something beautiful and functional. I taught her how to sand with the grain, how to choose the right wood for different projects, how to feel for imperfections with her fingertips. In return, she showed me her world. Her apartment above the flower shop was a riot of color and creativity. Canvases propped against every available wall, brushes soaking in mason jars, tubes of paint scattered across surfaces like fallen leaves. The organized chaos of it made perfect sense once I understood how her mind worked. I've been thinking about what you said, she told me one afternoon as we worked side by side in my garage. She was practicing with a hand plane. learning to shave paper-thin curls from a piece of pine while I worked on sanding the legs of a coffee table. About creating something that matters. I want to do a series of portraits, but not traditional ones. I want to paint people the way you see them, really see them. All the details that make them who they are, not just how they look on the surface. I stopped sanding and looked at her. She had a wood curl caught in her hair, and there was a smudge of sawdust on her cheek. She looked beautiful and determined and alive with possibility. That sounds incredible, I said. Who would you start with? She smiled, that radiant smile that never failed to make my heart skip. Your mom. She's the first person who really saw me when I moved here. I want to capture that, the way she makes everyone feel welcome, the way she loves without conditions. I felt a surge of love for this woman who understood my mother so completely. She'd be honored. And then, Kate said, stepping closer to me, I'd like to paint you. Me? You, the way your hands move when you work, the way you listen with your whole body when someone's talking, the way you see beauty in things other people would throw away. She reached up and brushed the sawdust from my cheek. The way you saw me when I couldn't see myself. I set down my sandpaper and pulled her into my arms, not caring that we were both covered in wood dust. I love you, I said, the words coming out easier than I'd expected. Kate's eyes widened, then filled with tears, but she was smiling. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't think I'd ever be brave enough to say that again. You're the bravest person I know, I told her, and I meant it. We kissed then, surrounded by the smell of wood shavings and the golden light streaming through the garage windows. It tasted like promise and sawdust and the kind of future I'd stopped believing in. That evening, we told Mom about our relationship officially, though she just laughed and said she'd been waiting for us to catch up to what she'd known all along. We sat around the kitchen table, the same table where I'd first seen Kate 8 months ago, and made plans. Kate would start her Duarte Remain series. I would help her set up a proper studio space in the unused room above my workshop. We would take things slow, but we would take them together. You know what I realized today? Kate said as we walked hand in hand through the neighborhood later that night. The maple trees were at their peak now, their leaves a canopy of fire above our heads. What's that? I spent so many years trying to be what other people wanted me to be that I forgot who I actually was. But with you, I don't have to try to be anything. I can just be me. I stopped walking and turned to face her. You're extraordinary just as you are. So are you, she said. And Dylan, thank you for always knowing when I need help, even when I don't know it myself. I thought about that first night when she'd stayed behind after dinner and asked me that question. How do you always know when I need help? At the time, I thought she was talking about the practical things, the broken chairs and squeaky hinges, the moments when she needed distraction or comfort. But now I understood that she'd been asking about something deeper. She'd been asking about being seen, about being known, about having someone who pays attention to the subtle signals that say, I'm struggling or I'm scared or I need someone to remind me that I'm not alone in the world. We help each other, I said. That's what people do when they love each other. Kate smiled and stood on her tiptoes to kiss me. I'm still getting used to that, she said. Being loved. But I think I'm going to like it. You better, I said, because you're stuck with me now. Good, she said. I like being stuck with you. 6 months later, Kate's portrait series was the talk of the local art scene. She'd painted 12 people from our community. Mom, Mr. Henderson, the grocery store clerk, the mailman, the grumpy woman from next to the gallery, and others who had touched her life in small but meaningful ways. Each painting captured not just their physical appearance, but something essential about who they were as people. The portrait of Mom was my favorite. Kate had painted her in the kitchen, hands covered in flour, laughing at something just outside the frame, but it was her eyes that made the painting extraordinary. They held all the warmth and wisdom and unconditional love that made Mom who she was. When people looked at that painting, they understood immediately why Kate had fallen in love with our little family. The portrait of me was harder to look at, mainly because I wasn't used to seeing myself the way Kate saw me. She'd painted me in the workshop, but I wasn't working. Instead, I was looking directly at the viewer with an expression of such gentle attention that it made my chest tight. It was like she'd captured the exact moment when someone realizes they're truly being seen. It's how you look at everyone, Kate explained when I asked about it. Like they're the most important person in the world, like their story matters. The series was featured in a gallery in the city, and Kate sold half the paintings on opening night. More importantly, she'd found her voice as an artist. The girl who had moved to our town, lost and broken, had become a woman with purpose and vision. We were living together now in the house I'd grown up in. Mom had insisted, saying the place was too big for just her and me. And besides, she liked having Kate's laughter filling the rooms. Kate had turned the upstairs spare room into a studio, and on quiet evenings I could hear her moving around up there, lost in the flow of creation. Some nights I would climb the stairs and find her standing in front of an easel, brush poised in the air as she considered her next stroke. The late light would be slanting through the windows, turning her hair to gold and casting long shadows across the canvases propped against the walls. In those moments, she looked like she belonged exactly where she was, like she'd found her place in the world. "What are you working on?" I asked one evening, wrapping my arms around her from behind. "Something new," she said, leaning back against my chest. "I'm calling it home. It's not a portrait this time. It's a feeling." I looked at the canvas and saw swirls of warm colors, amber and gold and deep red, like autumn leaves or firelight, or the feeling of safety after a long journey. There were no recognizable shapes, just the impression of warmth and belonging and peace. "It's beautiful," I said. "It's us," she replied. "It's this house, this town, this life we've built. It's the feeling of finally knowing where you belong." I understood exactly what she meant. I'd lived in this house my entire life, but it had never felt like home the way it did now. Home wasn't just a place. It was the people you shared it with, the love that filled the spaces between the walls, the sense that you were exactly where you were meant to be. "I have something to show you," I said, taking her hand and leading her downstairs to my workshop. In the center of the space sat a piece I'd been working on for weeks, a hope chest made from cherry wood with intricate joinery and a finish that glowed like honey in the lamplight. I'd carved a pattern of maple leaves along the edges, each one unique, like the leaves that fell in our yard every autumn. "Dylan," Kate breathed, running her hands along the smooth surface. "It's gorgeous. Who's it for?" "You," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "For all the things you want to keep safe, your art supplies, your memories, your dreams." I paused, pulling a small velvet box from my pocket. "Our future." Kate's hands flew to her mouth as I dropped to one knee beside the hope chest I'd made for her. "Kate," I said, opening the box to reveal the ring. I'd chosen a simple band with a stone the color of her eyes. "You asked me once how I always know when you need help. The truth is, I've been paying attention because I love you, because your happiness matters to me more than my own. Because I want to spend the rest of my life seeing you, really seeing you and helping you see yourself the way I do." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she was smiling. "Dylan, will you marry me?" I asked. "Will you let me love you and help you and see you for the rest of our lives?" "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." I slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that shook slightly, then stood up to kiss her. She tasted like tears and joy and the promise of all the tomorrows we would share. "I love you," she said against my lips. "I love you so much, it scares me sometimes." "Don't be scared," I said. "We're in this together, always." We were married the following spring in the backyard of the house where I'd grown up and where we would continue to build our life together. Mom cried through the entire ceremony, and Kate's parents flew in from Portland, finally ready to see their daughter for who she really was, rather than who they thought she should be. The ceremony was small and simple, just family and close friends gathered under the maple tree that had shaded my childhood. Kate wore a dress she'd found at a vintage shop in the city, and I wore a suit that had belonged to my father. When we exchanged vows, I promised to always see her, to always pay attention, to always know when she needed help, and to never be too proud to ask for help myself. Kate promised to love me with the same fierce attention I'd shown her, to see me as clearly as I on her, to build a life together that was based on truth and kindness, and the kind of love that makes people better than they thought they could be. After the ceremony, we danced on the back porch while Mom's old radio played songs from decades past. Kate's head rested on my shoulder, and I could smell her perfume mixed with the scent of the lilacs blooming along the fence. It was perfect in the way that real moments are perfect, not because everything was flawless, but because everything was exactly as it should be. "Do you know what I love most about this?" Kate murmured as we swayed together. "What's that?" "We're not just getting married, we're coming home to each other, to this place, to the people we were always meant to be." I tightened my arms around her, thinking about the journey that had brought us to this moment. A year and a half ago, she'd been a stranger, sitting at our kitchen counter, laughing at Mom's stories, and trying to figure out how to rebuild her life. Now she was my wife, my partner, my best friend, and the person who had taught me that love isn't just about seeing someone clearly, it's about helping them see themselves clearly, too. "Mrs. Dillon," I said, testing out the sound of it. "I like that," she said, lifting her head to smile at me. "Though I think I'll keep my name for my art. Kate Morrison has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" "I think everything about you has a nice ring to it," I said, and she laughed. The same warm laugh that had caught my attention that first night. As the evening wore on and our guests gradually headed home, Kate and I found ourselves alone on the porch swing Dad had built when I was a kid. The stars were coming out, and the air was soft with the promise of summer. In a few hours, we would go inside to the house that was now officially ours, to the life we had built together. One careful, attentive day at a time. "Dylan," Kate said, her voice soft in the darkness. "Yeah?" "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, for knowing when I needed help, even when I was too proud to ask for it, for loving me enough to pay attention." I kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair and the night air and the roses Mom had planted along the porch railing. "Thank you for letting me," I said, "for trusting me with your heart, for teaching me that love isn't just about helping someone, it's about letting them help you too." Kate snuggled closer to me, and we sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Tomorrow we would start our official life as husband and wife, but tonight we were just Dylan and Kate, two people who had found each other and learned to see clearly, sitting on a porch swing in the house where love lived. In the distance, I could hear Mom moving around in the kitchen, probably cleaning up the last of the wedding dishes and humming to herself the way she always did when she was happy. The sound made me smile. She'd gained a daughter today, and Kate had gained the mother she'd always deserved. One who loved without conditions, who saw her clearly and celebrated what she saw. "Do you think we'll always be this happy?" Kate asked, and I could hear the wonder in her voice, like she still couldn't quite believe this was her life now. "I think we'll have happy days and hard days," I said honestly. "But I think as long as we keep seeing each other, really seeing each other, we'll be okay, as long as we keep paying attention." Kate turned in my arms to look at me, her eyes bright even in the darkness. "I love that about us," she said. "We don't just love each other, we notice each other. We pay attention to the details that matter." She was right. That's what had made the difference. From that very first night when she'd stayed behind after dinner and asked me how I always knew when she needed help. It wasn't magic or intuition. It was the simple act of paying attention, of caring enough to notice the small signals that people send when they're struggling or scared or in need of connection. And now, sitting here on our wedding night, I realized that paying attention had become more than just a way of caring for Kate. It had become a way of living, a way of moving through the world with open eyes and an open heart, ready to see and be seen, to help and be helped, to love and be loved in return. The night was getting late, and soon we would go inside to begin our married life together. But for now, we sat on the porch swing in the house where I'd learned to see clearly, surrounded by the love of family and the promise of all the tomorrows stretching out before us, like an unwritten story waiting to be told. Under the golden glow of October maples, in a house humming with the warmth of family, Dylan's story with Kate unfolds like a quiet revelation. A carpenter shaping raw wood into lasting creations, Dylan lives with his mother tethered to the home of his childhood. Kate, an artist bearing the scars of a broken marriage, enters their lives as a stranger. her laughter mingling with the scent of sawdust and homemade bread. Yet, on one pivotal night, when she lingers after dinner, her guarded eyes betray a deeper need. Dylan, attuned to her unspoken pain, sees her, really sees her, and in that moment, a bond is forged. Her question, "How do you always know when I need help?" carries the weight of her vulnerability, answered by his simple, profound act of paying attention. This story whispers a timeless lesson. Love and connection begin with the courage to notice. In a world that rushes past subtle cues, Dylan teaches us that true care lies in seeing the unseen, the fleeting glances of hurt, the quiet moments of courage. Kate, once lost in the aftermath of betrayal, finds her reflection in Dylan's gaze, rediscovering her own strength. Their journey from tentative friendship to a love sealed under a maple tree reminds us that healing comes not from grand gestures, but from small, intentional acts of presence. To see someone fully, to hold space for their fears and dreams, is to offer them a home within your heart. Have you ever noticed someone's silent struggle and reached out? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear how you've built bridges through attention and care. If this tale of love and seeing clearly resonates, subscribe and hit the bell for more stories that remind us to live with open eyes and hearts. Let's keep noticing what matters together.